everybody, and welcome to masinahikan iskwêwak. I'm Kayla, and today we're actually shooting on location. So we are here, and we are in a special place, and we have a very special guest with us today, our very first guest. So that's super exciting. And I'll let the rest of the crew introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Sheila LaRock.
And I'm Tanya Ball, and our special guest today is...
Ambrose Cardinal. I guess, do you want me to introduce myself right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can
No,
introduce
we're
it.
just going to stare at you for
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Tell us a little bit about you, or you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, where are
Well,
you from? What's your story?
well,
What's your name?
Who
What's
are
your
you?
star sign? No,
Oh my god.
Tanse ni pakwe simoen papemontith nitsi garsoon ochikia amiskachiwaskagan, and also Prince Albert. I'm still learning. I have to learn how to say Prince Albert in Cree. But essentially, I'm really, really grateful to be here amongst the matriarchs. You know, this is
You make us sound so old.
no, not
People
old.
are going to be like matriarch
Old
and then check to see like our photos and be like, I wonder what face cream they're using.
Hey man, matriarchs are powerful.
That's true.
I'm acknowledging the power that I'm surrounded by, and I'm very thankful for it. This experience, getting to know everyone here involved with this podcast, is pretty essential to what I'm doing right now. And like, if it wasn't for these powerful iskwêwak in this room, I wouldn't be really fulfilling the things that I'm doing right now. And right now, I'm currently in my 4th year of university. I'm studying kinesiology, so I study movement and I study why people move. I don't know, but I specifically study adaptive physical activity. But I'm really interested in resurgence and reclamation, and reclaiming our health practices, and dismantling different systems, and just supporting people. I think that's one thing that I've always want to do, and I think that's one thing that we always want to do, but there's always these different institutional demands or limitations that are put forth in front of our way sometimes. But as Indigenous people, we overcome that no matter what. I'm 21 years old. I'm a brother. I'm Métis. I'm from Prince Albert, like I was saying before.
Perfect. So, as you know, our podcast is about writing, editing, and publishing with and for Indigenous folks. We invited you here because you're working on a very special project. Mm-hmm. And we were hoping that you'd be able to share with the listeners what exactly that you're working on and why it's important.
Yeah. So this project that I'm working on is called Nanâtawihiwên, which means healing yourself day after day, or doctoring yourself day after day, loosely translated. And essentially what I've been trying to create for the past almost 2 years now is an Indigenous health zine for institutionalized Indigenous people. And what that really means is trying to create a publication or try to create work that's based within the medicine wheel, and that is trying to contextualize the medicine wheel and use it as a tool rather than a mere symbol of recognition, or like a mere symbol of, I don't know. People use medicine wheels for everything now, and we kind of lose the context and we lose the teachings out of it. So this project is really grounded in reclamation, reclamation of the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspects of ourselves as Indigenous people, as we traverse through institutions. And the reason why I'm focused on institutions is because, the history in which we are in, the history of Canada, which is known now, is very contextualized within institution, especially towards our own people. And we can draw comparisons between institutions in all different types of places, and we can even think about Canada as an institution in some ways, in the construction of it. The reserve system, script signings, treaty. And through that experience, we're all bound and kind of related to each other through that. We might all be cousins somehow, but we're also related through our experiences and through the things that we overcome. And that's often something that becomes very muddy within the political climate in which we exist. So my goal is to kind of acknowledge the humanity in each one of us, and start there rather than starting at instances of lateral violence or something that we're accustomed to, right? And this project started about 2 years ago. I was working for the Aboriginal Student Services Center, and I was also part of the Aboriginal Student Council. I was Vice President External, and that year was hectic. Standing Rock was going on. Like, people were getting, like, I don't know if I should share this, but we were getting, like, stalked by the police. Like, there was just a bunch of crazy stuff going on because they thought we were associated with Indigenous resistant groups or something like that. But essentially, we just wanted to serve the community. We wanted to change, to make some changes. The origin of the zine comes actually from a tragedy or a loss within the institution. Someone, a part of the Faculty of Native Studies, lost their life to mental health and other things, and as a leader of the community, I felt kind of responsible for some way. It was kind of weird. I was just upset that nothing was really being done. We always talk about creating that Musqueam house or whatever, or we're always expecting more than what's given, scraps that are given, and I just wanted to do something about it. And I've always known that our own healing starts from within, but it sometimes it has to be primed from something. Because we exist in a very dysfunctional society, right? So we can't really expect to always be healing ourselves and always be appeasing people, and so it's very complex. And I started the zine off with like self-help quotes and stuff like that, and I was really gearing it towards first year students, like within TIP, just first year students, maybe coming from reserve or settlement, and just experiencing a lot of culture shock, right? And like I literally started off with like a Google Doc with just like just splitting it up. I've always wanted to create something based around the medicine wheel, because my first teachings on the medicine wheel were very needed at the time, and they really sticked with me and really helped guide my life. So I wanted to do something similar. And when I first was starting it, it was like how to cook moose stew or something. I don't know. I just was finding all these weird recipes. It was like, okay, how to pick herbs in the river valley. I interviewed someone, and I was just talking about like, how'd you graduate? And, just like very broad questions. And I had no idea what I was doing. And then I like contacted someone who was working for New Trails, because New Trails published that issue about residential schools. And I was like, damn, this is actually pretty cool. This is interesting. I was like, would New Trails ever like support or create an Indigenous based like magazine for students at this university? And I was like, shit, like I'll go talk to them and see what's up. And it was like August by then, and I met with someone, and they were like, okay, like I like your ideas, blah, blah, blah. And like, if you get us like some kind of outline or something like that, we can maybe work with something. So I was like, okay, I have to make a magazine in 1 month. And I want this magazine to be in the backpacks, like the ASSC backpacks. And it's going to be great. And like, I expected to create, like, I didn't even know anything. I didn't know how to use InDesign, didn't know how to use Photoshop. I was a terrible writer. My writing was terrible. My ideas were, I don't know. I was just very fragmented, right? And it was very interesting at the time too, because at that time I was experiencing a lot of trauma, and I was like recovering from a lot of trauma from that experience of being in the ASC and that experience of Standing Rock, discovering my own indigeneity, and through all of it, right, trying to recollect different pieces of myself and try to be proud in who I was, and try to be firm in my own identity. And I was going through a breakup, and there was all this crazy stuff going on. But at that same time, that same summer is when I was actually welcomed into ceremony. I found out that I had a relative who was an elder, and his name's Will Campbell. And I ended up at a Sundance, and I was there, and I didn't even have a tent or anything like that. And I was just like, do you know Will Campbell? And they're like, yeah. And then I just camped out there. I just borrowed someone's tent, and then I met him the next day. Like, it was just a weird time. It was a very weird time, and there was a lot of changes in my life. And I was 19 at the time. I don't know. I've just always wanted to. I love my people so much that I want to do something that shows the love. That tries to contextualize that love. I was really thankful because around that time, me trying to put this magazine together. I didn't know what was going on. I got in contact with Tanya Ball, and it was through her that, like, shit, this could actually happen in some way, in some capacity. This could actually happen, because we sat down and she was telling me about the work that she was doing with Rise. I didn't even know what a zine was. I still don't even really know what a zine is. And we were talking about Rise, the zine that Tanya was helping with at the time. And I was like, maybe I don't need to make a magazine. Like, that's kind of, I don't know what I really want to make. I just want to make something that reflects the medicine wheel, and that is telling our own stories, and that is contextualizing ourselves. And that's something that's completely Indigenous and doesn't have to be recognized, or doesn't have to be affirmed by the institution, and is really about focusing on each other. I was really noticing at that time, being wrapped around all this different politics and all this different, drama, that we get really separated from ourselves amongst everything. And we think that we're serving our own people, but sometimes we just need a cup of red rose, and we need to focus on ourselves. I was really fragmented from that. But Tanya really saved my ass. Can we swear?
You should have heard our last episode. Jeez.
But and it was through Tanya where I learned what a zine was, and it was through Tanya that I was kind of getting familiar with InDesign and stuff like that. But I was doing and Tanya helped me do these different workshops. At first I didn't really know what they were going to be, and they were very broad and very vague, and it was essentially just a couple of my friends coming together and us making art, and me trying to, like, share experiences and stuff like that. But to be honest, I didn't really have any teachings, but part of the teachings came through my own healing and through that connection with my Muslim will. So this process of creating the zine is not just about creating the zine, but it's actually like trying to live out the things that I'm talking about, the things that I'm discussing, the things that we're navigating within the zine, right? And I guess the most essential part of Nanâtawihiwên is that it's like a quadruple collaboration project. Like, what that means is that someone scribbles on a piece of paper. I say, hey, that looks cool. I see someone else's poetry, or I see someone else's expression. I say, okay, let's see if those go together. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that kind of looks like it's part of their physical being. Okay, let's put that in there. And then someone else, a couple days later, a couple weeks later, whatever, we get submissions, whatever happens, then I see that, I was like, oh shit, that's cool. And we put it all together. So it's like, it's always developing, it's always like unfolding, and it's just like, it's crazy the amount of collaboration that goes into certain pages of the zine. It was like, I'm still working on it, and the collaboration is just like the most beautiful part. But it's also something that just brings you together with someone, right? And it's also a piece in which you can express something that maybe you've never even talked about before. Maybe there's a part in the emotional that reflects and talks about lateral violence and how that's expressed and manipulated and shown in different ways. And maybe that's something that you've been dealing with every single day of your life. So then you're like, wow, and someone submits something to you and you're like, this is totally something that I experienced too. And like, it's very interesting. We're very connected in so many ways, and we forget about it. We forget our own power and our own connection, because this society is always trying to muddle us up and push us in a different direction, or trying to assimilate us in so many ways. We also were doing work with Jella in the prisons. And like, the prisons to me is a very significant place. I was actually baptized in a prison, believe it or not. I was baptized in the Drumheller Penitentiary. My Muslim was in jail. He was serving a life sentence for first-degree murder, which should have been manslaughter, but because he's Indigenous and because he's visibly Indigenous, he was sentenced for life because they found his fishing knife in the truck, because but and it was like, but he got out. He served 21 years. The institutions are a very, very interesting place for me, because it is a place where so much pain happened within my life. Like, you can trace the trauma, and you can trace that erasure of the role of father from my mother, and you can see that intergenerational trauma that was exhibited through it. And today, even though he's grown so much as a person, he has his own company and stuff like that, I still see the trauma and see the things that have happened to him in there, and we don't even have to talk about it, right? So it's a very interesting place. Jella is a really important part of that story too. I still haven't had the time. It's not time. It's more commitment. I still haven't made the commitment to go and to fulfill my, to do a workshop by myself or with other people. But we did create a workshop for people within the Remand Center, and it was very broad. And the person who was conducting it was Allison, and she didn't really know what the medicine wheel was either, and she's not Indigenous, but it was just really interesting because the way that we structured it and the way that it was presented offered this discussion about it, offered this coming together, and these different people, who've never really spoken in that circle before were talking about like, oh yeah, like I remember hearing these stories about the medicine wheel when I was a kid, and it was a moment of reclamation. It was a moment of reclamation into like the most dehumanizing, most isolated, most traumatic place. And it just shows you how powerful our traditions and our ways are, and how connecting they could be. And that's kind of where that idea of having the zine be for institutionalized Indigenous peoples came from. And that's been a guiding feature to many of the things I've been doing now. Through the zine and through my experiences and being connected with my Muslim will, I've been able to take on the responsibility, co-chair of the Nanâtawihiwên Justice Committee, and we do restorative justice for first-time offenders, and their youth. It's a really important work, and it's an opportunity to change someone's life, steer them away from, the context of their trauma and bring them into somewhere, powerful. But it's also an opportunity to kind of disrupt something, and to show. I don't really want to be recognized, but we show the colonial system, the judicial system, that we have our own systems, right? We have our own practices, and they exist today, and they're happening right now. It's crazy. There's so many things that we could do in a moment that disrupts and really breaks like this matrix of colonialism. It's really interesting. That's part of it. And I've seen it within these workshops too. And the most recent time I remember seeing it actually was a couple of weeks ago. Me and my friend Kyron, when there was still, no snow on the ground, we went over to Rundle Park and we brought our drums with us, and we went over to the riverbank, and we were practicing some songs, and we were practicing the Creator song that we know, and we were practicing some other songs. And I had to start with my drum. I have to start a fire to have it go, because it picks up humidity a lot. But anyways, we had to start a fire, and we warmed up the drum on this beat, on like this, on the river valley bank. And for that 15 minutes, it was like we broke reality. It was crazy. Like, I didn't even notice anyone around us. There's cars passing by. It's Rundle Park. Frickin' the refineries over there. And, but it didn't matter, because what mattered was that moment, and what mattered was honoring ourselves and our ancestors. Right? And then 15 minutes in, we see a truck drive across this bridge. What is that truck? Is it a police truck? Like, what is that? Police truck? Or, and our first reaction was to run. So we just picked up our stuff and just pieced out of there. And then we were running for like 5 minutes in the river valley, but then I just stopped. I'm like, Kyron, why are we running? He's like, I don't know why we're running. And I was like, shit. See how like ingrained our own trauma is? Our first reaction, our first instinct is to run from the first indication of institutionalization, or of threat and of taking something away from us. Holy, like that was a pretty empowering experience in itself, because you kind of see how things are very connected. And then a couple weeks later, I remember sitting for Thanksgiving with my cookum, and I asked her, I just asked her, like, did you experience residential schools? And she said she has 8 siblings, and she said we didn't, because we were hiding in the bushes. you know, and we didn't even go to school because we didn't want to go to that school. So it's just like, and like, it's so, and she's only 60 years old. So it's just very interesting to see all these things still concurring and existing within us. And they're always going to be there, right? But we can confront them, and we can confront them and express them in different ways that makes it digestible, makes it something that we can overcome. I don't know. I kind of forgot.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well,
Do you want to explain what Jella is for the listeners?
yeah, so Jella is the Greater Edmonton Library Association, and they do so many different things, including the Prison Project, which is what Ambrose was kind of referring to. That's kind of, I don't know if it's run by Alison Sivak, but Alison Sivak and Jessica Thorlaxon are the ones that actually took on this Indigenous program that Ambrose and I created, and I need to reconnect with them and find out like what's happening, but they're basically the ones that just exploded it, and they've just been incredibly supportive. And I mean, I can only imagine what it's going to be like in the future, right? Yeah, I mean, I would definitely give them props, and I don't know, can I just say, like, just hearing you talk, Ambrose, maybe this is the mom in me, but I'm like, oh my God, I'm such a proud mom up there. Like, you're so amazing. And of course, like, I never want to interrupt a story, especially a good story, right? So it's hard. I have so many questions to ask, but I don't know. I'll let it to you too. See if you want to ask anything.
So just to clarify, the Prison Project is getting books and materials into prisons and to those who are incarcerated. And so your workshop are writing workshops?
No. So what the workshop that we do is taking different magazines and taking different, there's pretty much just catalogs and different things, and almost like it was almost like a collaging project, right? So people would come in there, and essentially the workshop was kind of like, what do you know about the medicine wheel? It kind of just started off with something very broad and open, and we really made it clear that we didn't want like whatever they were feeling or whatever frame of mind they were in, and because they knew that this zine would reach people on the outside and would reach youth and hopefully empower them. And one thing that I wanted to focus on is like, I don't want to hear the narratives of, oh, I should never done this, or, you know, like, don't be like me, kids, or anything like that. Because I really want to honor the teachings that they learned through their experience, you know, to empower them to really express and to share their own medicine wheel, you know, share what the physical means to the mental, emotional, spiritual, and kind of tie it in together in some way. So it existed within, I don't really know how many people created something in the workshops, but we did have submissions, and that's what we know. With like this one individual like submitted like 6 poems. They were freaking amazing. I'm still using them and putting them in the zine today. And then this other person drew this medicine wheel on their bed sheet, and it's just like beautiful, like super high definition, super detailed, you know, super amazing. And like that medicine wheel actually is the first thing. When you open up the zine, the first 2 pages is that medicine wheel is there, you know, and that medicine wheel is there, and it's very empowering. I'm very honored by the person who submitted it. And the funny thing about that medicine wheel was that we were doing another workshop or something like that. There was an advertisement for Nanâtawihiwên in the First People's House. I just had the medicine wheel there, and I was trying to show them like what was going on with the zine or whatever, and it was kind of just like a Dropbox, like submit something, put it in there. My one friend who is the visual coordinator, or like does the visuals for iskwêwak, the local band in town, the Edmonton-based band, saw the medicine wheel and was like, holy, like I want to make that like an album cover for iskwêwak. And the funny thing about iskwêwak is that I didn't know this, but I'm actually like second cousins with the lead singer, Chris Harper, you know, and we didn't know this until we actually went to a lecture by Maria Campbell, and we got to meet each other there. And then a couple months passed, and he was doing tours and stuff like that. And then I invited my friend Courtney to the Sweat, and then they were like, oh, can we bring my friend Chris, who's the lead singer of iskwêwak? And he shows up, and I didn't even have to give him directions because he was there before, because Will's his uncle like me, and we met there again. I was like, holy, what? You know, like what? It's kind of like starstruck, and then it led to collaboration because he was like, I want to get in contact with the person who created this medicine wheel, you know, and we want to support our own people, and you know, we want to give these people royalties and whatever. Unfortunately, I think communication was lost or something like that, but something really interesting happened through that interaction, and you know, discovering my own relations was that Nahiwak got signed by the label Arts and Crafts, and a part of now, apparently when you're signed with a record label, you have to be affiliated with some kind of non-for-profit society or something like that. He wants to create a partnership with Nanâtawihiwên or some broader structure that includes Nanâtawihiwên, and they want us to sign with the record label too. I don't even know what that would look like or what that is, but I was like, that's interesting. You know, talk about publication. When Indigenous people publish something, we're not just thinking about ourselves, you know, especially with a project like this. Like to be honest, I don't even really want to recognize myself in this project because it's not about me. You know, it's about all these people coming together. It's about our future. It's about about our kids. It's about, you know, the ones who passed away. It's about our ancestors who protected these ways. And I really want to celebrate it, but not myself.
I think that's the most powerful statement you probably could have ever made, that Indigenous publishing is not just about us, and it's not just about individuals, it's about all of us uplifting each other, right?
Yeah.
And that's incredibly important, and a huge, probably the biggest difference between traditional publishing and like what we would do as Indigenous peoples, right?
Mm-hmm. And through the, like I said, through the creation and collaboration of creating Nanâtawihiwên is also coming a lot of different other collaboration with other different Indigenous artists. I am going to name drop, but like Chief Ladybird was interested in submitting something, and other artists are also interested in submitting something. I'm friends with the people who do Mobilize, the Indigenous clothing company. That's the thing, when you get a group of Indigenous artists together, there's like no limitation. You know, there's no limitation. I think the only limitation we have is being back home by a certain hour. You know, like a volunteer or whatever.
That's so cool. I love Chief Ladybird. So when you said that, my eyes were like, oh my god, I'm swimming over here. That's so cool.
Is amazing.
Yeah.
So this is your first kind of like publication, other than like what you're doing right now. What kind of areas have you looked at? Like, how have you been thinking about actually getting like your publication out? Are you going to do like print copies, digital? Like, what kind of avenues have you explored?
Well, a part of this process, working with Tanya, working with people within the library like yourself as well, was about fundraising. We had to find a way to raise funds because our original vision was to have paper copies. And the reason why we wanted paper copies was so that, you know, community members, people who don't have access to the internet or computers or could physically have a copy, you know, and it's a very visceral experience, and it's a very, you know, more personable experience when you have that copy in your hand. So that was our original goal, and the other goal and vision was to also have this free, to not make money off it, to not make profits, but to be, if anything, to have it based by donation. And we have raised a lot of money through the GoFundMe thing. What was it called? You Caring?
Yeah, You Caring.
It was called You Caring, but then like in the summer they like went under or something like that. But we did raised like about $1,300 from it.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
You know, and then we also got funding through the Book Publishers Association. So part of this process has also been about fundraising, but it's fundraising through our own community. You know, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are always supporting us, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who should, benefit from it. I don't know. It's a very interesting process, and then we also want to do a digital copy just so it's accessible and out there, and you know, it'd be a good way to connect with other relations from other parts of Turtle Island. And to be honest, I've been thinking about this project since I was 15 years old. And when I was 15 years old, like I was talking before, is when I first got those teachings about the medicine wheel, and I needed them at that time. You know, I'm a white passing Métis man. One of the difficulties that I had growing up was not really knowing who I was, but also really knowing who I was in certain ways. And I don't know, I knew that I've always wanted to serve the community, and I knew that that's my life's purpose is to serve the community, serve my people in some way. You know, even though growing up you hear all these negative things about your own people, even from your own people, you know, going to visit relatives and, you know, going back to Prince Albert, wherever it is, you're always reminded about these negative stigmas that, you know, our own people inflict on ourselves, and experience it every day. But I always knew that was bullshit, you know, and I've always wanted to express that. And the way that I learned to express that, or to formulate that, was through the medicine wheel. And Leonard Saddleback, elder from Musquechies, he was the person who first gave me those teachings of the medicine wheel. And I did a health internship, Anderson Hall, which was the Indigenous Health, which is now the Indigenous Health Clinic out of Royal Alexander. And if it wasn't for those teachings, holy man, I don't know, I would have been on a totally different path. At that time, I was recovering from an ACL surgery. I used to be an athlete, I used to play football, and that was kind of my whole identity. And my parents were going through a really rough time. I didn't know this at the time, but my dad was struggling with drug addiction. My mom was dealing with depression and all these different things, and I had 2 little sisters, you know, and in many ways I became their father through an extended period of time. If it wasn't for those teachings, if it wasn't for some understanding that there was connection, and I just had to wait, you know, and keep working and keep doing things to, you know, to motivate people, even if they weren't even Indigenous people yet. I knew that I had to motivate people, and I knew I had to move forward in my life, and not really lament or sit in my own burden of struggle. And it was a really pivotal time. And around the time that I got those teachings, I had a vision. You know, I had a vision. I didn't even know that it was a vision, but I had a vision that there would be a place that we would go, and it would be in a wheel, in a circle, but it would be a health center, right? It would be a health center that encompassed the medicine wheel, and that it existed as the medicine wheel. You know, we had the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, a place where we can all come together and heal. And one thing that I've been beginning to know over the last couple of years now of doing ceremony, that those things already exist, that those places exist, but they're not available to all of us, right? And that sometimes we have to work and disrupt institution, and almost like we have to create our own systems in order to really materialize and really exist in that way. Because one thing that I've noticed about institutions through this project and through my own experiences and through politics and through all this other shit is that the best thing that the government knows how to do through institutions is limit Indigenous people's ability to care for each other, right? So if we find a way to create a place where we could do the exact opposite, man, you know?
Yeah. Well, you are probably you're so amazing, and one of my most favorite memories from becoming a librarian and coming up through this whole institution of a different library culture is when we all went to Jasper together for our conference. That was the funniest thing. We just were well, we're just gonna bring Ambrose with us, and we kind of didn't tell anybody, and we just showed up with you. But I think one of my favorite things is often there's kind of institutional practices and places where you just don't feel like you belong. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I find conferences you just don't feel like you should be there.
Yeah.
But it was so nice to have you there because you were just so straightforward with everybody and was totally keeping it real. Plus your mom and your sisters came, which never happens. I never see families at conferences, but it was so awesome because your little sister was also drawing for the zine, and it was the best thing ever. But also because then you went fishing with Les, and he showed up at Jasper Park Lodge in that beat up truck, and I him walking down the road, and I'm this is the most Nietzsche thing I've ever seen, and he's just talking to me in Cree, hanging out the window, and I was oh my god, I was this is the best. But it also was so grounding at the same time because you're in this place where it's so expensive, it's so bougie, and you just don't feel like you belong. And then it became felt like home all of a sudden, where I was like, oh yeah, this is so great. So
Well, it was also at the Jasper Park Lodge, and if anyone who's ever been to Jasper knows, like, there's totem poles everywhere, and it just doesn't make any sense. And when you basically called just Jasper out as a city on a whole, like, during your part of the presentation, is just awesome.
Yeah.
Like, yes, just
that's
yes.
because the history of Jasper is messed up in general. I know, I've written many a research paper on it. That is my area of study. But it's also, like, one of those places, too, where they're like, oh, let's do treaty acknowledgements, and then, like, have fun with that one. I get called up, like, help us do a treaty acknowledgement. It's like, okay, well, which communities do you want to talk to, and how are we going to do this? Like, I'd rather not get, like, slapped on the wrist by, like, one community or the other today. I'm not going to touch that.
It was kind of funny. A couple weeks ago, I was asked to be part of this panel that was discussing treaty acknowledgements, and it was for the Faculty of Arts. And one of the only things I remember myself saying was that, and it was the same week that Canada legalized marijuana, and I said, well, like, you guys can legalize marijuana, but can you guys legalize Indigenous reclamation? Like, why don't we do that? And then it was like a room full of deans and, like, chair people and all these different people. And it was funny because it was in that round room, like the Kiva room. Like, the person who was organizing it didn't bring any smudge or anything like that. And I shared a song with them, and I don't know, I just felt really, it was just a strange experience. But that was, like, one of the funniest things that I remember saying. And, like, this one dude who's like, he just was like a complete hippie, and he was like, ah! And he was like snapping, like doing like the jazz snap or whatever, the library snap, the clap.
The library clap. Like a seal clap.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are potentially getting kicked out of this room. Let's see if they
displaced.
They're walking away.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
All right, we can pause it.
Ceremony with him for like 30 years, and he's one of them, and he's like, he struggles with like just a bunch of mental health stuff, but those are two of his poems. And it was cool because a couple weeks ago was his birthday at the Naked Cafe, and I actually got to go up and play the drums while he was like spoken wording his poems, and it was really cool.
Wait.
Yeah. Anyways, let's restart.
Okay, so I just started everything again. We are back after being displaced.
Short displacement.
Short displacement.
But we have moved on to a better space because this is my home away from home space. And there is luckily no construction going on today, so that's also nice. And the space was available, so we are back.
Perfect. So if we can't really jump off right exactly where we left off. Ambrose here was just showing us some examples of the pages from his zine. I don't know if you want to start there, if that's a good place.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So first, before I kind of talk about some of the pages, I just want to talk about like more collaboration and cool things that happened out of Nanâtawihiwên. And like one of the cool things that's occurred was that one of my friends who was submitting a lot of poetry and stuff like that, because she was dealing with the breakup, and like I kind of became like, I don't know, like her journal or something. I don't know. It was interesting, but she created a lot of cool poetry, and then she now wants to create her own zine, so I might help her with that. But then also during the same time that I was working on my zine, this amazing young iskwêwak from Musqueam, Samson, was creating the zine too, and she released 2 issues during the summer, and they're called I have to look at it again, but it was crazy. I think my girlfriend told me about the stuff that she was doing, and then I like messaged her and I was like, hey, like we should collaborate, and then she's like, yeah, for sure. And then we kind of just like lost contact, and then she was actually going to her first year of university from TIP, and then like she knew no one in Edmonton, but she knew my girlfriend, so then she ended up living with us for a week.
Cool.
And like the zine that she made was Nanâtawihiwên. It's like a derivative of like Natotum, like friends. And it was like the zine itself is about you. It's a youth zine based out of Musqueam, and it's just like highlighting kind of what youth are doing down there. And it was like a really cool project, and it was just like, she calls it like, it was like she was I don't know, just bringing life, like through her publication, she was bringing the stories of her like lived experience, the stories of the res, and kind of just like showing it, and it was like really cool. And I was like, damn. Out of that also came, she allowed me to kind of use some of the things that she put in her zine. So it's like a cross collaboration. So she made this really cool image. So she used the 100 Days of Cree. She did like this cool like a Star Wars fan fiction kind of thing within her zine, and she created like this image of all these different artificial people, and so it's just like very.
Oh my god, I'm looking at it right now and it looks amazing.
It's really cool. It's like sci-fi. Like she was doing
cool
Indigenous
is that?
futurism.
Oh yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, she's really experimenting with Indigenous futurism. She uses the Cree word for artificial people in the middle. And I was like, hey, like, I really this is how I want to start off the mental part of my zine. Mm-hmm. So I just recontextualized it. This is what the edits were.
Cool.
Oh my god.
Is that Justin Trudeau's face?
Yeah, there's
hold
Justin
up.
Trudeau's face.
What's his name?
Harry
Is that
Bellegarde.
President Turpin's face?
It's President Turpin.
Oh my
That's
god.
hilarious.
There's a logo that I used to be there's a Native Studies course requirement logo student group that we used to have.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So it's like that is an example of
Artificial intelligence.
Maybe.
As in artificial and like it's not real. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, that was so salty today. You could tell it's getting late in the day. I was like, it's not real smart.
Oh my god. So obviously
All about the looks.
I'm a huge comic book nerd, and that makes me think of like the Marvel different universes, right?
Yeah.
Like that's two different zine universes coming together to create this gigantic, interesting backstory kind of a thing. It's almost like a little wink or a nod to the hat,
And another collaboration, like, to be honest, a lot of times I just see cool things that my friends on Instagram are doing, and then I just message them. I'm like, hey, can I use this in the zine? And then this came out of it, and I call this the Appropriation Chronicles by my friend Kaiman. It's very interesting.
It's a lot of images of non-Indigenous folks in headdresses and text to go along with it. And that's obviously been in conversation lately. Appropriation of Indigenous.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's just a lot of people wearing headdresses.
I love the write-ups about them.
The write-ups are very provocative.
Yeah.
But also very honest.
And
Cassandra's got it going on.
Do you want to read one of them?
Dude, I feel like I can't read Cassandra's because we won't be able to publish this if I do. Okay, I'll read Marie. Marie is age 42, yoga instructor, has 8 kids, youngest never wear shoes, vegan as fuck, speaks French, hippie, mom, boys, organic, never stepped foot on reserve, says she's goddess of
femininity
and has tapestries over her house and statues of Buddha.
So there's a lot to pull out
I
of
feel
it.
like I know this person.
I feel like I've been to a potluck.
I think we've always
Yeah.
And they probably gave you a lecture about how veganism is like the way to go and how Indigenous people create genocide against animals.
And a hummus recipe.
Yeah. Okay.
And a hummus recipe? What? Okay.
And then this.
They shared their hummus recipe.
They share it.
So this is also this is another
Recipe.
this is another collaboration. This is like images used from my friend Maria's zine, and then also another crossover with another amazing Indigenous iskwêwak. This piece, actually, all the people who contributed to this piece are all from Muscatees. It's like the Indigenous. It's like the. I don't know. It's just really cool.
Can't even describe it.
Yeah.
It looks like to me, it looks like a badass Indigenous woman holding, like, what is that, a gun?
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's another image of another woman and a large white dog, maybe a husky?
Or a wolf.
Or a wolf,
It's
yeah.
a wolf. It's a wolf dog.
Wow, what does the symbol say?
I don't know.
It says symbols.
I didn't ask.
Fair enough.
I gotta
So-
look at my syllabics chart.
Since we're looking at these pages, a lot of them obviously are very provocative.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Does that make you worried, Ambrose? Like, oh my gosh.
Is that from the Gopher Museum?
Yeah, this is from the Gopher Museum, the Torrington Gopher Museum. There's this gopher, and it says Indian Village, and it's a gopher in a headdress, kind of doing like the typical stoic kind of pose or whatever, right? And then a teepee in the background. Yeah.
And the label Indian Village at the top.
And then the only edit I did was just a speech bubble that says why. Yeah.
You should add another gopher in there. Why not? That'll be the colonial line or something.
Yeah.
And then have like a black dot beside us.
Yeah, Kayla and her black dot.
If you're more interested about the story of the black dot, email us and we can talk more about that.
Yeah, actually, like we are gonna have this on a website. It would be cool to connect
Oh yeah.
your stuff, obviously,
course.
because people should see what we're looking at.
So what was your question? Am I worried?
Yeah. Well, where do you, or are you worried, or have you thought about like, okay, well, what will white people think of this, or is that like whatever? Who cares?
Well, like part of this project is the reason why this project exists is to reclaim parts of ourselves and our indigeneity, and to reclaim, our health customs and how we think about ourselves again. And part of that is not being apologetic. Part of that is loving ourselves. Part of that is loving our gritty ass humor. Part of that is appreciating and expressing ourselves in different ways and connecting with each other. And like a lot of this zine is these conversations that we have when white people aren't around. It's part of a lot of the zine is these conversations that we kind of keep to ourselves, and we giggle and we laugh in like the back of a classroom or something like that. So like it's a place where we could explore that, and celebrate that, and that's part of healing. And a lot of these images that show like the provocativeness exist within the emotional. Part of the zine that I'm also working on is the exploration of decolonial love and as sex as medicine, and kind of how you were talking about like sex magic or whatever, right? Maybe that can go in the zine, but like
I'll make sex magic and I'll give it to you.
No.
Like this is sex magic.
That also sounds like a communicable disease.
It could
Give me
be.
my sex magic.
Sex magic could be anything.
It's a character.
It's a character.
Oh yeah, sex magic is a character that I've decided needs to exist in the material world.
The reality is, like, the people who struggle and the people that I want this zine to reach and I want them to feel, supported by are people that societally aren't acknowledged or recognized within as being even human. There's certain things that we have to start doing for each other. There's certain ways that we have to connect with each other and not be so apologetic or not really look for, appraisal or recognition from our own oppressors, right? So I'm not really worried about this at all. I really think that there's a lot to come out of it, needs to exist, and this kind of talks, and the stuff that I'm working on in terms of research base is completely going along this continuum of Nanâtawihiwên itself. I'm doing research, this is kind of academic, but I'm doing research based around the politics of recognition, expressed through Glenn Coulthard's book, Red Skin, White Masks. And I'm using the politics of recognition to kind of frame and to kind of explore Indigenous health research and why certain Indigenous health researches and methodologies or whatever exist, and like where the differences are between the Western health discourse and then our own community health discourses. And essentially the question I'm asking is, why can't Indigenous knowledge just stand on their own? Why do they have to be recognized in the first place? And we exist within that too, and why do we have to be recognized or made, why do we have to apologize for being ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We always have to have like this barometer, and gauge.
So then, if you were to, because you started this out, this is pretty grassroots, like this is you, what would you say to other young Indigenous people that are thinking about doing projects, whether it be like writing or graphic novels or anything creative that could lead to publishing? What would you say to them?
Well, the one thing that we have to acknowledge is that, like kind of what we were talking about before, when a group of Indigenous people come into a room and they express themselves and they share our truth and we come together, there's an infinite amount of possibilities that can happen. Part of the thing that we have to acknowledge within ourselves is our power to do something and to create. A lot of times as Indigenous people, we limit what we do and what we say and how we express ourselves because we're worried about what others are going to think or how we're going to be judged. And part of that creation process is to bring about something within yourself that will be shown to the world, and it doesn't have to be something, you don't have to be, freaking Picasso or whatever to make art. You don't have to be a gifted writer or whatever, right? Because the thing that you bring to the table is something completely unique and beautiful to this world. And to really exist within this world, to really be proud of yourself, is getting comfortable with that. Getting comfortable to be able to express yourself. The reason why Nanâtawihiwên has been such a healing experience for me is because I've had to learn that too. I've had to learn how to take risks. I've had to learn how to open myself up and communicate. And I've had to learn how to let go of a lot of stuff. Part of creating is letting go. Letting go of all these different things and insecurities that we have about ourselves and this guilt and shame and whatever it is. So creating in itself is healing, right? Because if you really think about it, creating is just an extension of what Creator does. Creator created us, Creator created all these things that we're expressing and we're connected to them, So the one thing I would say is create relationships and find people who you don't have to, find people who you can be yourself around first and then just see what happens. Bring out a recorder, start drawing, start making a video, because these projects that we think about, these dreams that we have when we were kids, these visions that we have, carry on into our adulthood, carry on beyond that. There's so much that can come out of that. We inspire each other so much just by being in the same room, just by, saying like, oh, it's okay to be ourselves and just allowing for that process to happen. Coming together and creating a ceremony. It's all a continuum. That's one thing that we have to recognize, is that we're all part of this continuum, and when we use our voice and when we learn how to love each other and we learn how to, acknowledge who we are and where we come from and be proud of it, despite all this other bullshit that's put onto it, all these stigmas, all these really racist things and, our own internalized shame. Once we get past that or start even thinking beyond that, holy, the world is ours, and I really believe that.
Did you have any other questions?
No, I think, unless you have a question, Sheila, I think that's
amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this project with us and the world. I'm not as articulate as you at this hour.
Yeah.
Maybe I can be, but what you were saying about so many things resonated with me, especially collaborations, as we're all in this room. Hopefully a safe space.
Yeah.
Together.
No, it's got a code lock, so no one can get in here except for us.
Phew.
I got the magic key today, so we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
Well, and I think collaboration, coming together, this podcast would not happen without collaborating or coming together.
Yeah.
We would not have met each other if it wasn't for having jobs in the same institution and all being Indigenous women, or the fact that Tanya was hey, do you want to do this thing? And then I knew Ambrose before I knew Tanya, but not how I do now, because Tanya kind of opened up that gate of friendship and collaboration with each other, and it's good.
Oh yeah, I don't like to work alone. This is tired.
And the one thing that I want to to end on and to share also, on that note, is that, we need Indigenous-based projects to really change the dynamic and really change the power imbalances that are experienced by, Turtle Islanders across, all of this land. And, that starts with creative projects. And the other thing I want to say is that it'll probably be done January 2019. Hopefully. And then when that happens, there'll be further collaboration, because I want to have a launch event or it's very people who've collaborated with me just sharing their experience collaborating, and expressing it in different ways. And I hope to have music, and hope you guys can come too.
Of course.
I'll be there. We'll
Yeah.
stop in like, hey.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be the
there.
loudest ones in the room, probably. Just like feeding off of each other.
Just like always. Anyway, so that's the perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Ambrose, for giving us your time and for sitting down with us and sharing with our listeners like all the cool, amazing stuff that you're doing. And hopefully we'll be able to share some of that stuff on our website once it is built. But it will be happening.
Yeah.
So I guess until next time.